In an ever-changing world, Off Hollywood Media presents a voice of truth and inspiration, resonating a vibration of love and understanding, illuminating new paths for new directions, as we, as one, strive for higher and higher levels of consciousness, always remembering life changes. And now, your host, our MC, our master of change, Filippo Voltaggio.
This is Filippo Voltaggio, and this is Life Changes with Filippo, and we've got a great show, and I'm excited that our guest is actually quite unique to, well, of course she's very unique actually, but she's even more unique to our show because we have not, as of yet, in the year and a half or so that we've been doing this every single week, had a psychic, a medium, a remote viewer. We have not had one. And who knows, there's no particular reason, but we are so excited that she's with us today. She's that and so much more, and I can't wait to get her on so we can talk about her and the work that she does and how she can help us do what we do better and help us live better as well. So with that, gosh, I missed hearing our song at the beginning. You know how you take things for granted, and I never listened to the song at the top of the show, but I know it's there, and I hear it in the background. And now I didn't hear it, and it's like it's missing in my head. It's like the show hasn't started because I didn't hear Marco and Barry and myself sing our Life Changes song. So I'm sure we'll hear it at the end, and I look forward to hearing it then to feel a completeness to the show. But it's interesting, talking about taking things for granted. Last week we talked about how I put a hairline fracture in my ankle and twisted it on both sides, my left ankle, for very good reason. And I didn't really know those reasons going into it, but I certainly learned it on this week. And I also thank our last week's guest, Steve Siskold, for helping me talk through it on the air, actually. And for those of you who missed that show and want to hear more details about that incident, and actually the whole show was fascinating, you can go to lifechanges.ws and hear the archived show in its entirety there. And so it's interesting. Let's see. When it happened, my sister-in-law, who learned from me, ironically, was right there, and she said immediately, it didn't happen. And I knew what she was doing, and I jokingly said to her, like, hell, it didn't. I'm feeling this, and it feels terrible. And I, of course, knew, because it has worked in the past, that if I said it didn't happen, it didn't happen, I probably, and we probably all together, could have made it so that my ankle was back to what it was before. But something in the back of my mind told me that if I didn't go through this and learn the lesson of this, then something else would have to happen, and it might be worse than this, for me to get the lesson, because I knew there was a lesson here. Because I have had things happen to me or people come into my life, and I ask myself the question, do I really need this? And sometimes the answer is no. And the people just go away, or the thing doesn't manifest. And that's great. But if there was a lesson there, like there obviously was this time, I needed to learn it. And so I learned a lot during this week. And the quicker I got the lessons, the quicker my foot has healed. And it's quite amazing, actually. I am delighted. I'm not surprised. I am delighted. And one of the other things that I noticed that happened today, since I haven't been able to get around, I haven't seen anybody, and since I haven't been feeling my best, although I've been doing pretty good, I haven't really talked to anybody and kind of have kept pretty much to myself as far as friends and all. And I've noticed that when I've talked to friends, I really haven't had to share this story. We've just talked about things that I'm working on and things in the future and things that I'm looking forward to. And today I was out in a store where I knew a couple of the people there, and somebody came up and gave me a hug and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I said I was doing great, and I said, and I started talking about what I'm working on and things that are happening, and I was visibly limping, and I could feel myself limping, but I didn't bring it up, and none of these people brought it up, and we just moved on. And I thought, how interesting was that? As I walked away from this situation, I thought, how interesting, how cool that we don't have to focus on that, and we can put energy on what I want to have happen. I don't need attention because I have a hurt ankle, or I should say I had a hurt ankle, because my attention is going towards the future, which is part of the reason why the ankle is so important and why the lesson happened, because of an ankle, which I can't stand on it, or I can't move forward, I can't walk through, I can't run. Well, I'm looking to run, I'm looking to walk, I'm looking to stand where I am. I don't need to talk about who I was or something that happened. I'm talking about the future. I'm focused on the future. And if what the future is, and if the attention, if where we put our attention is what expands, then that's what I'm expanding. So this will be, unless there's some other lesson that I can't wait to share, this will be the last time we talk about that. And I use that as a lesson for so many other things in my life. If you know, and I'm doing this, if I get a parking ticket, or if I, you know, somebody hits me from the back, it's not something I talk about. It's like, yeah, well, the car's getting fixed. You know, or nobody knows. And people in my life say, how come you didn't tell me that happened to you? Because I'm not focused on it. Unless there's something that I need to learn and grow from that I think I can share with other people, because I don't want that to expand. I don't need those things to expand. I used to want that. I used to want the attention there. I don't anymore. There's so many more important things that I feel I need to do, and so many more joyful and interesting things that I would rather share with my friends in the little time that I have with them and with all of you, than to talk about things that I don't want to have happen again or to expand. Again, unless there's a lesson to learn, and boy, are there lessons to learn. So with that, I want to remind everybody that you're listening to Life Changes with Filippo on the BBS Radio Network, and that you can learn more about us at www.lifechanges.ws. Soon to be lifechangesomethingelse.com, that we hopefully will announce in a couple of weeks as we get our network up and running, for us to be all connecting in a very, very special way. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to connecting with our guest today and bringing her on. She's Marigold Somerset, and she is an internationally acclaimed psychic, medium, remote viewer, speaker, spiritual counselor, and author. In her practice, she is known as a soul mission specialist who uses her precise clairvoyant skills to help people resolve issues through life readings, future predictions, medical clairvoyance, business resolutions, and contacting spirit guides and loved ones on the other side to bring detailed guidance for our life's paths. As a professional remote viewer, she works with a law enforcement organization for crime, case resolution, and prevention. Her client base spreads throughout the U.S., Europe, South America, Australia, and Asia, where she teaches her signature systems of spirit fusion, soul mapping, and remote viewing with soul mechanics. With a bio like that and so much more, we have so much to talk about. I'm so glad that Marigold Somerset is on the show with us. Marigold, are you with us?
I am. Hello.
Hello. You are with us in so many ways, I know.
Yes, I am.
And I am not afraid. In fact, I am thrilled.
Good. Your excitement is part of the process that draws everyone to hear you and your melodious voice.
Aw, Thank you so much. Well, interesting that you when we met, actually, I actually sang at this event, and you and I had a moment without knowing each other. We felt a connection, and then I got up on stage and sang, and months later, when somebody said, Marigold Somerset, and in my mind, I'm thinking, I know her. How do I know her? And then I made the connection at the event where I was singing and you were speaking, and I thought, how interesting. We shared a split second of a moment, and those moments sometimes indicate our future, right?
Absolutely. There are lots of heads-up moments that are pre-paved, and it's very interesting when you get to operate on the function of what they're doing in your life, and you really notice them and look for them in a really natural, organic way. You start to be able to use them to your benefit.
So, like, for example, I could have taken that moment and actually introduced myself or something like that, or you're just saying to note them?
Either, both. It depends on how much you recognize the impact of these meetings and these moments and their purpose. But if you, in that moment, recognized it as something very important or even critical in certain cases, then an introduction would be really important, so you would have an instinct to do that or a direct message to do that. But if it were something that was just leading you to the next event, it might have just been something that you noted more deeply, so that when the next event came, you really grabbed onto it and just took charge.
I get that. Like, there's a history, and you kind of say, you make a note of that moment, and then later on you can go back and say, okay, this is part of that. And even still, here we are today having this moment, when months from now or years from now, then there could be a whole other moment and we say, wow, who would have known we were on the radio together? Well, you would have known.
Well, we can look into these things as deeply as we want to. That's the point.
Well, actually, it's interesting because when you and I actually did speak earlier, and I was saying, well, you could do this and this and this. As a matter of fact, actually, let me list a couple things, which I don't know if everybody knows what these mean. You're clairvoyant, you're clairsentient, and clairaudient. Now, clairsentient is that you feel, well, clairvoyant is you see things, right, in the future,
right.
Okay. And clairsentient is you feel things, or you sense things, okay. And clairaudient is you hear them, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, and you're saying that, of course, well, actually, I don't know this. Did you recognize these abilities as a child, or did you develop them, or both?
Well, they were there at a very early age, and I didn't know the difference, meaning that they weren't supposed to not be there. They were just how I was living and experiencing this world. But as I grew up, as I talked about things I was seeing or hearing or experiencing in other realms and things that I wouldn't or shouldn't have known, I noticed that it wasn't necessarily something that was accepted by everyone. So as a child, I definitely was grappling with what I was going to do with all of that extra information. And it was with me early on, and I was always aware of it, but went through periods when I was younger where I didn't really necessarily want to be known for it or only do that.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was easy, and yet at the same time, I can't imagine it's easy. Actually, what am I saying? I'm listening to that, and I think that's kind of hard, but I think about us, some of us who don't, or most of us who don't have those abilities. We're kind of living our life in the dark, though, right? So that technically that's harder, and you're saying it doesn't have to be that way.
Precisely, and that's the embracing of it certainly for me, because there's an ability within everyone, at least if you look at yourself almost mechanically as an apparatus, there's psychic function as just looking at it as a function that's possible for every human being. Now, in my case, it clearly was connected to my entire being, my soul mission, my purpose, all the other, actions around me, as well as the interdimensional beings that want to work with me. So it's a much bigger tableau. But everyone has an ability to use their own innate psychic function and develop it to certain degrees.
Well, I'd like to believe that, and I know you teach that, and we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the places where people can learn from you. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the other things that you do that I think are really cool. It's interesting that I come from a world, I used to work for IBM, and I used to be in the business world, and I used to be a skeptic. So I come from that world, and so I see all sides now, having spent so much time in this world and finding so many of my own abilities like you're suggesting here. So from the skeptic side, one of the things that I found really, really interesting is that our governments, our police, our city police and federal police, state police, these different agencies actually not only hire people like yourself, but rely on people like yourself for some highly sensitive information that only people like yourself can provide. I think that's fascinating. It just gives so much credibility to what you do and your field. Is there anything you can say about that? Because I know a lot of it is top secret, and a lot of it is for the good, not just, what people might think, there's some conspiracy going on or something. But because I know you help with crime prevention as well. And is there anything you can say about that?
Well, the traditional, I guess one would call formal aspect of psychic function that you're referring to is called remote viewing. There are many ways to use one's faculties. That particular process, favored by certain organizations, is more, I would say, a system that's clinical. And the clinical aspect of it is where they want to take it in a very rational sense, almost trying to trick, the different sides of the brain in order to get the information. Now, for me, that's not necessary, but it is a way that you can go through their system and use your psychic abilities to do their protocols, because that's how they like it done. So it's a grand study. It's been studied for many, many years by many parts of the world. Many countries do this. Many parts of different factions of the countries, not only governments but other agencies. So it's a way of gathering what they would refer to as raw data. It's different than when most people think of as a basic psychic reading, because the information that's gathered is extremely specific, based on a target, and very raw in its form, in order to create lots and lots of information and put it together, like I said, under certain protocols. So it's definitely an interesting way to do it. The one thing I found fascinating for me, because I'm coming at it differently than most, was that I was accessing another level of intelligence besides that while I was doing it. I was going into other realms into what I call divine intelligence, and then using that in relationship to what I was viewing on that level. And that makes all the difference, because it becomes a very high-level awareness of what you're doing, how you're affecting the field that you're looking into, how there is no such thing, really, as remote anything. There's no remote in remote viewing. You're affecting everything that you are engaged in. So I got very, very into looking at the purpose of the views and the purpose of my interacting with whatever the subject matter was, and how that's all related on a much larger scale, like what the entire event was for and my responsibility within being involved in it or not. So in my case, because I go way into soul mechanics and the idea of what you're really doing here from the origin, I mean truly the inception of before you were ever even a thought, which then needed a vessel, which then became a reason for you to exist. So if you go way back into the mechanics of soul and why you come here, and then you use that perspective on anything, including remote viewing, including any type of daily task, you're looking at how the playing field of what is going on here is affected by everything else. And that just changes, what you do, what you want to do, who you're involved with, what you're bringing to the table, and more importantly, I would say what your purpose is before you ever got here.
I've never heard it explained like that, and I like it so much. And this analogy came to mind. I love analogies, and I was thinking recently I've seen family members school their children, and in their schooling, the children are really happy or not so happy sometimes about learning certain things. And take, for example, mathematics. Well, they're learning this page of how to do math. And they're 8 years old and 6 years old, so it's not hard math, but they're learning these math problems. And when they're done, they think they've solved the math problem. But what they don't know is that the math problem is not really the reason why they're learning this. They're learning this so they could do other things later on in life. And yet they don't know that at their level. So expanding our view, if they were able to, as children, be able to say, oh, look, I'm learning this math problem, but it's really so I could do this, and that's really so I could do this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, because a lot of the Western schools are taught with the concept of, fact-finding and fact-recording, and I always, remind people when I'm working with them that your brain ideally is not for storage.
Oh?
Ideally it's a focusing mechanism, your mind. And so you are training it in which way you want it to be trained when you give focus to what you want to do. But if you're working primarily from the idea of storage, then this is one of the issues that I get into a lot when working with people, is you're referencing a library. So that's all you have, is what you have up to this point. You've learned and encoded and been imprinted and programmed by whatever has happened up to this point. You could include past lives, but that's a much bigger subject. So you're accessing only that when you are trying to look for, let's say, solutions to anything in your life, or a way out, or a way to do something, or including healing. But if you go on the routinely discussed or taught way of teaching in most Western systems, people have been taught to use their minds a lot as that storage. So your mind will go to its own reference library to find an answer to a problem, and generally speaking, this can create a lot of anxiety because the solution does not live on the same plane where the problem was created. So that's why I teach. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, I was going to say that's exactly why I teach the kind of work I teach, involving spirit fusion, for exactly that reason, is to get beyond that level of the reference library and the reactive mind.
It's interesting because I was talking about my ankle and twisting it and spraining it and fracturing it at the beginning of the show, and it's interesting how everybody in my family knew it had nothing to do with the body. And even my mother and my sister, who I didn't know, knew about this kind of stuff, saying, what is it in your life that you're still not getting, that you're not able to, stand up for yourself or, and I'm looking at them saying, wow, this also served for me to know that they know that it's way beyond this. And so we took care, they took care, I took care to heal the body. But what was most important to all of us was to take it beyond the body and find out what it is, because that's where the real healing needed to be.
That's right. That's always the best attitude, because, like I was saying, you came here for a reason. You came here even into being. There was a reason before that. So there are things for you to do here in this interesting place that has a lot of polarity and different forces at work. And so you will face challenges, and you will have, in many cases pre-created them or pre-paved them just for these reasons, for your own tension to get another access for new information, for new awakening, for learning. So your attitude is absolutely right on. And you can go as deep as you want to go in terms of accessing more information about these kinds of things. So if you're studying, for example, this process of spirit fusion, you're going to an infinite field of intelligence that you keep going and you keep going. And as much as you can expand into, you can learn more about where everything is coming from, the reason for it and the purpose of it.
Yeah, I want to get into that actually. And before we do, I want to remind everybody that we're listening to Life Changes with Filippo on the BBS Radio Network. And our guest tonight is Marigold Somerset. And she is a psychic healer, a visionary, a remote viewer, a medium, a spiritual counsel, and an author, or counselor, and an author. And to learn more about her, of course, you can go to our website at lifechanges.ws, but you could also go directly to www.marigoldonline.com. And Marigold is spelled MARIGOLDO. I just got myself all confused. Sorry about that. MARIGOLDONLINE.com. marigoldonline.com. And we are talking about, so many things, but we're about to get into spirit fusion, which is something that Marigold teaches, and she'll be teaching about this in Orange County and also at the Conscious Life Expo in October. Both of them are coming up pretty soon here. Actually, the Orange County one, we just missed that, right?
Well, I have an ongoing class there, but there's a new class coming up in Los Angeles in the fall. So actually, you didn't miss the one in Los Angeles. Okay,
and that's when?
And it's going to be starting in early November, and I will be sending out the dates and times for anyone who's interested. You can just go to my website and join the newsletter, and I'll send you the information, or you can just go to my website and find the contact and email me that you're interested, and I will give you all the information for the upcoming class in early November.
Excellent. And then we're actually going to be at the Conscious Life Expo as well, and so we'll get to see each other there, and I look forward to it. But in the meantime, you on the 16th will be speaking on psychic function and soul mechanics. So I'm reading the blurb here, which looks fascinating. Learn a science that connects your higher self to infinite realms for recreating vitality and acquiring knowledge to enhance your life's calling. So basically, you're saying that we all can access, other than just the library of our experiences, so much more, and that it all begins with what you have coined and are creating, spirit fusion, that it all starts there. So is there something you can give us that is like the fundamental that we could start convincing ourselves that we are more than just the library of information that we can access through our brain?
Well, I would say the first idea when you say what can we give ourselves is just the acknowledgement that you are. The simplest way to do that, of course, without even learning any techniques of spirit fusion, is to just recognize that you came from somewhere outside of this dimension and you have an exit strategy. So
you mean like death?
Yeah. So you're going out, okay? So you're just passing through. So if you recognize just on a simple level, without even going into techniques of how to get a broader, expansive understanding of, conscious awareness of your greater self, just logically, you're here and you have something to do, whether you notice it yet or have discovered or activated your understanding of a soul mission or not. You have what you're doing here, and then you're going to leave and go back to what you were doing before, and more than that, because what you're doing here will relate to what you do after. So just that alone is the first recognition. So I would say acknowledgement of your greater eternal self is the first key thing, because there's no reason to go into any form of self-exploration with any confusion or doubt that you are a greater and more eternal, wiser, broader self, because you are. And then getting into how to do it, just knowing that the first step is, it's not about just, I have to, or I'm going to become a psychic. Like you were saying before, you were in the very, linear world mind, set where the idea of that stuff was just a little bit out there, right?
Right.
Well, you don't have to think of the traditional, I'm going to be a psychic for everybody else. You simply learn that you can access an infinite field of intelligence that's your own, that's connecting you, to your eternal soul or your higher self first. That's the main thing. It's about getting the information for you. It's not about learning how to become, a psychic or a remote viewer or a professional, unless that's your calling. It's really learning how to access all of this incredible support, because once you get into connecting to your wiser, more eternal self that has absolute, infinite amounts of knowledge for you, you also have access to divine support coming in lots of the other forms, like master spirit teachers, spirit guides, angels, soul groups, friends on the other side. There's so many. I work with this every day, and they are there to help you if you can make authentic contact.
It's so interesting. You've hit on two things that I find. One of them made me laugh. You did it. You said it so well that we need to be able to accept the fact first that we can do this for ourselves, and also not project that, oh no, I don't want to be one of them. I don't want to dress weird or look into crystal balls or whatever it is. I'm sorry. I know I'm not offending you because you don't dress weird, and it's okay if you did. I know you don't, but, and you're beautiful, so it's not like, it's weird to, it's like, oh no, there's that lady who does that. No, it's like, hey, here's that lady, and she happens to also be able to do this, which we could almost happen to be able to do it too if we just let go of this image of of whatever we have. So yeah, we don't have to dress a certain way, and we don't have to, play a certain kind of music or do a certain incantation. That we just have to connect with whatever it is that you're sharing with us here, and that feels good. So thank you for saying that. First of all.
Absolutely. There's no prerequisite to play a stereotype of any form in this role, because it's not a role. It's simply you being more of you, and the true function of even why I teach this is about people accessing this for themselves. It's not about doing it for everyone else, or pretending that you're going to create an army of psychics to run around in long gypsy skirts and and carry crystal balls. Now, that to me is just laughable and silly, because first of all, it's not like that. But second of all,
I look silly in a gypsy skirt. I can tell you that. I just know it.
Well, you never know.
Well, you're right. I'll never know.
Okay, we'll keep you in your pantaloons, and you can just croon for us without going that far. But certainly, when you want to contact your higher self about anything, and go deep into profound knowledge that you can find out about what you can do to expand, your impact, your purpose here, what you're offering. I mean, because you're really here to give us your stuff. And so many people, underestimate themselves. And people, we get distracted. And there's so many ways to undermine your own power. So when you get really deeply committed to saying there really is a larger field of extraordinary support for me, starting with my own higher self, that really is different than my conscious everyday knowledge. It really is different. It will disagree with you. I promise you that. So, I mean, it is not just a, little warm, fuzzy feeling. It's not an airy-fairy business. It's a real consciousness that exists, that had a reason to help you come into creation. So it's like going to origin. And then from there, like I said, there's more. It includes the contact of other spirit that wants to help and is also interested in your case and your life and your mission. So when you get really clear on that, the fascinating conversation that you can have just yourself with the universe every single day is very inspiring, and it becomes a compelling thing to do.
Yes, it does, and there are some pitfalls that I fell into as I started to get into some of this. That maybe if I bring it up, maybe other people won't fall into them, and you can help us out here, Marigold, because as I started to learn and tap in, at least I thought I was tapping into something higher than myself, and I was seeing how people were doing certain things wrong. The first mistake I made was to try and tell them how they were doing it wrong. No, you're doing it all wrong. Listen, I'm tapping in, and I know. And then sometimes I was right, but sometimes I was really wrong. And so it was the process of learning the hard way, A, that we don't necessarily have to go out and broadcast this, and B, we don't necessarily always know, especially at the beginning, if we're tapping into a higher self or we're just tapping into what we want to think or what we want to believe. How do you get to know the difference eventually? Because I'll say this, I've talked to a couple friends recently who have said to me, I'm listening to my inner self, and I thankfully have not said, no, you're not, because I'm not going to be all, I'm not going to make that mistake. But I know they're not, and then they discover that they're not, that it's just their ego or whatever it is. I don't know. You right?
Yes, this is a huge part of the cultivation of this. This is definitely something like anything that we've been given as creators and free will creatures. It's something that has challenge involved, and otherwise, it would be boring. really, it's something you have to understand, that you go into with a clear conception that you're going to have to learn a bunch of things from scratch. So what you're talking about, for example, of somebody thinking, oh, I've got this idea of my inner self or my inner being, and now I'm a know-it-all, and I should just tell people things. Or maybe I got some kind of thing that I felt was an intuitive hit on something, and one day it's right, and the next day it's off. And you're absolutely correct. There's a lot of awareness that has to be developed with what consciousness that you're already dealing with, and the filters you have, and the programming, and the layers of imprinting and coding. So what you have to do first is really understand that you've got to decode yourself and getting to an absolute place of openness and stillness with the idea that you're going to become a witness of yourself, and you're not going to judge, you're going to now study. And one of the ways I do this, for example, with one example in class, is tracking desires. You can start with your desires and your passions and these heartfelt emotions, because they may not be your deepest truth at all. Like you said, they may not be, because the ego or the program or the addiction is an illusion that has gotten into the consciousness, and that is driving the emotion. So eventually you start to delineate between what is actually, truthfully, authentically coming from a higher self and a divine purpose. With practice, cultivation, work, you really have to make this authentic. You can't have some phony concept of this is just a lovely idea and then it's going to cut it. That doesn't cut it. You need truth, raw data, facts, and remote viewing or any other kind of psychic mission work. We call it back stats, meaning your stats have to be good. They have to be accurate and true. Or else you are kidding yourself with your consciousness and your own filters because of your desires that are pushing you to cause distortion in your field of awareness. So you learn to delineate between which desires are driving you to truth, absolute truth for you, and which ones are part of your programming. And when you can be honest about them, you can start to also have a technique to tell which is which.
I like it. And I'm hopeful. You know, it's interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have the time, and that's okay, because today is so much about really setting a basis for this kind of work and in this field. To us, at least on Life Changes, the show, it's very important that we introduced this field of psychic healer and remote viewer and medium with a great foundation, which I believe that we've done today. So we really didn't have the opportunity, and we're going to be able to go into your visions and what you've seen for the future and that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, we had some callers during the show, but we weren't able to take the calls because that's not what the show is about. But I do know that we talked about you seeing people being empowered in the future, and what you're really saying here is that you're setting that up for that to be possible more and more.
Absolutely. That is the ultimate acknowledgement, I would say. It's almost not even necessarily a goal, because if you deeply acknowledge it, it already is there.
Wow. Well, you know, Marigold, I just can't help but have to ask this as we're closing here real quickly. Do you happen to see anything for Life Changes or for me?
Oh, well, I'm quite certain that you will heal, for example.
Yeah.
And that you won't be wearing any long skirts anytime soon.
I love it. You're very good.
But No, I do think that your show is absolutely going to continue and expand, and that there are possibilities for you to get into not only more interactive with callers, but also going into filmed or videotaped events. And that would be a real positive for you to do that kind of broadcasting. So as you grow with this next year, that looks like something that would help your audience really connect, because there's a lot of energy that comes out of what you do on this show, and particularly your presence. So seeing that in your field, I would highly recommend that you follow that through.
Well, thank you so much, and I will follow that through, and I like that a lot. And I've been liking this conversation that we've been having, and I want to encourage everybody to continue the conversation, not only by being with us and visiting us at lifechanges.ws, and of course on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and all those wonderful things, and eventually on our network, but also to connect with our guest, Marigold Somerset, and you can go directly to her website at marigoldonline.com. And you could learn about her upcoming event in Los Angeles in November. You can get on her mailing list, etc. And at the Conscious Life Expo, which is also coming up in October. On the 16th, she will be speaking, and she's got a book out, and she's got all kinds of things where you can learn more about the work, learn more about her, and learn more about how you also can be empowered for the good of all. Marigold, is there anything that you wanted to add as we close tonight?
No, I just wanted to thank you for doing what you do, offering people an opportunity to listen to the quote, other type of information that is out there for them to recognize that there are people that are not, as you say, odd or strange or unapproachable, that are really doing this kind of work, and it all affects the possibility for everyone to connect to a notion that they have the power within them, and there are ways to do it. All they need to do is go out there and give it a try. So thank you for offering these conversations for people. It's really, really wonderful.
Thank you, Marigold, and thank you for being our guest today. We do have the power, and thank you for reminding us of that. So we bid you adieu, and now we continue our show with Dorothy Lee Donahue, who brings us Change Yourself, Change Your World.
Hi. Today I received an email from a young friend of mine who lives in India. He found me on Facebook back in March 2009. He was out of work, had no good job prospects, and was entirely broke. He also had relationship issues, and his mother had just been diagnosed with a brain tumor. We messaged a few times back and forth through Facebook, and then I gave him my email address when he asked if I could help him some more, and he asked what my usual fee was. When I told him, he wrote back, "Right now I'm broke. I don't have a job nor a life, so I won't be able to pay you any money. We'll definitely get back to you when I'm in a position to pay. Regards, Shayu." So I told him that if he would do something good for someone once he got his life together, that would work for me. In fact, he and I share a dream that someday all of the orphans and all of the forgotten elderly people will have loving care and a good home. I've been assisting him in becoming awake and aware ever since he agreed to pay it forward, and I've shown him how to become a conscious co-creator. Shayu has become like a son to me, and he says I'm his American mother. I've explained to him how we're the co-creators of this thing we call our lives on earth, and that it is our beliefs, our feelings, our thoughts, our words, and our actions that create our tomorrows. The first thing we did was discover what his beliefs were regarding his relationship, his job prospects, his abilities to earn money, and then we changed them. I shared with him the 3 books that, if studied and if one does the exercises in them, will assist anyone in becoming the master of their lives. These books are You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, The Life You Were Born to Live by Dan Millman, and Loving What Is by Byron Katie. Shayu never complained about how hard it is to change. He did the work required, and he made the changes he needed to make within himself. He understood that he couldn't change anyone but himself, and so he became the kind of person he wanted his soulmate to be. He began by choosing to love himself. When we love ourselves, we make more elegant choices and our lives improve. He hadn't thought about loving himself before. Most of us don't. But now he has a relationship which is a relationship and not the reactionship that it used to be. Shayu set reasonable and obtainable goals for himself, and he accomplished everything he set out to do. He took responsibility for his successes and his failures. He decided he was going to write a book and that he was going to get it published, and he has. So now I'm going to share with you the wonderful email he sent to me today. Hi, dearest Dorothy. With extreme pleasure, I want to share my happiness with you, as you have been the key factor in my life, because of whom my entire life took a total U-turn. I keep on mentioning about you to everyone possible, how you and our Lord Almighty has given birth to a new, positive, and confident person in me. Dorothy, my book will be released on the 18th of September, 2010. The response for the book has been positive, and I trust with God's and your blessings, it will definitely be a money spinner. As promised to myself, I will be using a good amount from the returns of the book for a worthy charity cause, which would include orphanages and old age homes. When I get an opportunity and when God gives me abundance, I will never cease to stop myself from helping others the way you helped me, and I would also use a good amount for your charity missions. I love you a lot, and I would have loved to have you here in India when the book gets released. Love you loads. Your loving Shayu. So, Shayu, my precious friend, I know you're listening tonight, and I want you to know that your success makes my heart so very happy. I'm absolutely thrilled for you and very proud of you and what you've accomplished. As we say in the United States, you have come a long way, baby. Thank you for giving me the credit, but all I did was show you the way. You did all of the work. You are the guru you were waiting for, not me. Thank you for listening to me and for doing your homework and for understanding that we are all responsible for co-creating our individual futures. You set your goal to write this book and to have it published, and you did what you needed to do to get it done. You honored yourself, and you didn't succumb to the pressure from an out-of-integrity publisher. You are the greatest, and you truly deserve the respect that you have earned through this process. I, too, wish I could be there with you when it's released on the 18th, but cannot. However, I know that you and I will meet in the not-too-distant future, and you will give me a signed copy. You know that I love you very much and that you're always in my prayers. All you need to do is to continue to believe in yourself and in your ability to co-create a wonderful life for yourself and the ones you love, and live in faith and trust that all of your dreams will continue to come true. Just keep on visualizing all of the orphans and the elderly people you will be helping living in wonderful homes. Thank you for being in my life and for being the brilliant light that you are. And now to my listeners, please remember that you are the power in your world, and you are the guru you've been waiting and looking for. You're the only one who can end your suffering, just like Shayu, and you can only do this by beginning a love affair with you. Let us choose to become very conscious co-creators by making elegant choices, and let us never forget that we are powerful beyond measure, and that we are love, we are lovable, and we are love.
Thank you, Dorothy Lee Donahue, with that Change Yourself, Change Your Life. And now we've come to the end of our show. It just goes so quickly. But with that, I want to thank our guest again, Marigold Somerset, and I also am looking forward to our next guest next week, who is Ilanka Harezi, and she's an accomplished businesswoman, a researcher, an author, an inventor, an expert in quantum mechanics and scalar technology. She's got some interesting, fascinating things going on, and I can't wait to talk to her about them. Remember, you can keep the conversation going during the week by visiting us at lifechanges.ws and by finding us on Facebook and our fan page, our individual Facebook pages, our Twitter pages, just YouTube, the list goes on. But we're there for you, and you're there with us, and we appreciate you, as I know you appreciate us, because you tell us, and it means a lot to us. Today's show has been made possible in part by our sponsors, Ion Ways Water Systems, Change Your Water, Change Your Life, and Love and Miracles, and Dorothy Lee Donahue. To learn more about them, visit our sponsor page on our website and click on their respective links. I am Filippo Voltaggio, and it has been my pleasure being of service by hosting Life Changes with Filippo today. I, along with our segment hosts and producers, Dorothy Lee Donahue and Mark M. Lejour, and our engineer, who today happened to be the program manager, Don Newson. Thank you for joining us and being part of this show and being part of the change we all wish to see in the world. Ciao, everyone.
You have been listening to Life Changes. Join us here every Monday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and visit us on the web at lifechangeswithfilippo.com. That's Filippo, Filippo. And follow our community on Facebook at Life Changes with Filippo. Join us here next week as we consciously embrace and explore the only constant, life changes.